Gallipoli appears peaceful today, but in 1915, these cliffs became a trap where strategy, courage, confusion, and industrial warfare collided beside the Dardanelles. Europe was locked in war. The Allies searched for another strategic route, through the Dardanelles, toward Constantinople, and beyond it, a lifeline to isolated Russia. Russia needed weapons and supplies, yet enemy control of the straits blocked the sea route. Allied leaders believed one bold operation might change the entire war. In London, the plan seemed elegant. Battleships would silence Ottoman forts, clear the mines, force the strait, and threaten the imperial capital from the sea. At dawn, British and French warships entered the Dardanelles beneath grey skies. Their heavy guns thundered against forts carved into hills guarding the narrow waterway. But the strait itself was a weapon. Mobile guns changed position, hidden batteries survived bombardment, and lines of mines waited beneath the dark current. On 18 March 1915, mines and coastal fire struck the fleet. 3 battleships sank, others were damaged, and the great naval gamble abruptly failed. Instead of abandoning the operation, Allied commanders chose invasion. Soldiers would land, seize the peninsula, destroy the forts, and reopen the passage for the fleet. Across Egypt and nearby islands, British, French, Australian, New Zealand, and colonial troops assembled. Many were inexperienced, and detailed maps were dangerously scarce. Training continued near Cairo, but rehearsals could not reproduce Gallipoli's cliffs, tangled gullies, narrow beaches, or determined defenders waiting beyond the shore with live fire. The Ottomans strengthened the peninsula under German advisor Liman von Sanders. Among their commanders was Mustafa Kemal, alert to where the decisive landing might come. Gallipoli's geography favored defense. Steep ridges, broken ravines, thorny scrub, and commanding heights, where defenders could observe almost every beach and inland approach below. On the night of 24 April, troopships gathered offshore. Men checked rifles, wrote final notes, and climbed. Before dawn, the boats moved toward land. Oars dipped quietly, officers whispered directions, and thousands of soldiers watched the black coastline grow steadily larger. At Cape Helles, British troops approached several beaches. Wire, cliffs, and concealed Ottoman positions turned carefully drawn landing plans into separate battles for survival. Farther north, Australian and New Zealand troops landed beside steep country at what became Anzac Cove on 25 April, away from the easier ground planners expected. Daylight suddenly revealed the attackers. Rifle and machine gun fire swept the shoreline as overloaded boats grounded, men jumped into deep water, and formations dissolve. Some soldiers climbed almost impossible slopes, pulling themselves through scrub and loose earth. Small groups advanced without clear orders, maps, or contact with commanders. Mustafa Kemal moved troops toward the threatened heights. His rapid decisions helped stop the Anzac advance before the invaders could control the peninsula's ridgeline. At V Beach, the converted ship, River Clyde, grounded near shore. Troops emerging from openings in its hull faced devastating fire across exposed fire. The beaches became crowded with wounded men, ammunition, water cans, and shattered equipment. Medical teams worked desperately while boats carried casualties back toward hospital ships. By evening, the Allies held narrow footholds, but not their objectives. Ottoman defenders still controlled the heights, turning every beachhead into a confined battlefield. Both armies dug quickly. In places, opposing trenches were only a few meters apart, close enough for voices, grenades, and sudden raids after darkness. The first nights brought thirst, confusion, and fear. Supplies landed under fire, units mixed together, and exhausted soldiers waited for counterattacks from unseen ridges. Gallipoli became a trench war compressed between cliff and sea. Every movement, carrying water, repairing wire, or relieving a nearby sentry, could draw a sniper's shot. Artillery shells crossed the peninsula day and night. Dust, smoke, stone, and splintered timber filled shallow trenches, offering little protection from nearby blasts overhead. Summer transformed the battlefield into a place of disease. Heat spoiled food, flies covered everything, and dysentery weakened thousands who had survived bullets and shells. Supplying the heights was relentless work. Sailors, engineers, Indian mule drivers, and labor units carried food, water, ammunition, and wounded men along exposed tracks the beach. On 24th May, a temporary truce allowed both sides to bury the dead between their lines. For several hours, enemies met in silence and exhaustion. At Cape Helles, repeated Allied attacks gained little ground. Each advance crossed open fields toward prepared defenses, consuming battalions for ridges measured in hundreds of meters. Letters home spoke of courage, boredom, hunger, and missing friends. Official reports sounded confident, while soldiers increasingly understood how completely the campaign had stalled. Even the sea offered no safety. Ottoman torpedoes and submarines threatened warships and transports, forcing naval support farther offshore and weakening the soldiers' protection. In August, the Allies attempted one final breakthrough: attacks at Anzac, a drive toward the Sari Bair Heights, and fresh landings at Suvla Bay. At Lone Pine, Australians fought through roofed trenches in savage, close combat. The position was taken, but the diversion cost thousands of casualties on both sides. At the neck, waves of Australian light horsemen charged across a narrow open strip. Ottoman fire cut them down within moments, and the attack achieved nothing. Night columns pushed through unfamiliar gullies toward the heights. Poor maps, darkness, exhaustion, and broken communication scattered units and stole the timetable before sunrise. New Zealand troops reached Chunuk Bair and briefly looked toward the Dardanelles. But they were exposed, depleted, and unable to hold the summit for long. Nearby, Gurkha troops reached the crest of Hill Q, one of the campaign's closest moments to success. But confusion and artillery fire forced them back. Mustafa Kemal organized a powerful counterattack on 10th August. Ottoman troops surged forward, retook the heights, and erased the Allies' last realistic chance of breakthrough. At Suvla Bay, fresh British divisions landed with little opposition, but delays and uncertain command allowed Ottoman reinforcements to occupy the surrounding hills. In time,
The August offensive collapsed into another stalemate. Thousands had fallen, the commanding heights remained Ottoman, and the invasion's strategic purpose was now beyond reach. Then winter arrived violently. Rain flooded trenches, freezing wind swept the ridges, and snow buried positions designed for summer, causing exposure and further deaths.
Charles Monro inspected the front and recommended withdrawal. The decision was painful, but staying meant facing stronger Ottoman forces and worsening winter conditions.
The evacuation demanded secrecy. Supplies disappeared gradually, troop numbers were reduced at night, and improvised drip rifles fired automatically behind to disguise emptying trenches. In December, the final troops left Anzac and Suvla almost without loss. The campaign's most efficient operation was not an escape. British and French forces remained at Cape Helles until early January. With evacuation complete, the last Allied soldiers left before dawn on 9th of January 1916.
The invasion failed to force the Dardanelles or defeat the Ottoman Empire. Across both armies, hundreds of thousands were killed, wounded, missing, or broken by disease. Gallipoli became sacred memory in Turkey, Australia, and New Zealand, and a grave trap for Britain, France, India, and others.